Robert Goforth in my kitchen. So anyway, so we just wanted to get together with you and ask you a couple questions, especially.
I like that tattoo.
Well, thank you.
Awesome.
So.
Did you get that after you started KY 120?
I did, actually, after this past year's election. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, anyway, but enough about me.
Sure.
No, you're kidding. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Why did you decide to run for governor?
Well, how much do you want to know? How I got to the legislature, why I'm running for governor, a little bit about my story.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, those that don't know me, that haven't taken time to find out a little bit about me, I'll start off by letting them know a little bit about my background. And I was raised in soul-crushing poverty, very poor, by a single mother, me and my two brothers. Pardon me. But a lot of times we didn't know if we were going to have food on the table, a roof over our head, what the day was going to look like. But she would always remind us, you wake up, get to school early so you can eat breakfast, make sure you eat your lunch. Of course, I was embarrassed a lot of times to go up there and tell them I didn't have money, but that was the thing about a lot of the teachers that were in my life and the lunch ladies, always, they knew, so we
always know.
they were always very kind and encouraging, but I was picked on a lot, bullied as a kid, dirty clothes, holes in my shoes, whatever, but I didn't let that bother me. I didn't let it define me, and I joined the Army whenever I was 18. I was a combat engineer in the United States Army. I got out of the Army. I went back home to Somerset and worked at a factory there called Tecumseh Products. And I thought I had the best job in the world. I was making about $11.44 an hour. And so that was pretty good for me at the time. And I hurt my back. Ruptured a couple discs in my lower back. After being treated by that physician, he told me I couldn't go back to that job anymore. He was going to have to sign off on my medical release, but I could never go back. He couldn't allow me to go back to that type of lifting and that type of job. And he had asked me, is there anything that I ever dreamed of doing or wanted to do with my life other than that type of work? And of course there was. I'd always dreamed of being a pharmacist. My little brother has cerebral palsy. I'm his guardian, and he's had seizures ever since he was born. And I would always remember him going to the hospital for these seizures. Coming home, we'd go to the pharmacy. That pharmacist would give us medicine. It would make my brother well again. And so I wanted to be like that pharmacist. I wanted to help people, and I wanted to make people well. And I told him that, and he didn't laugh at me. He didn't think that it was impossible. He told me to pursue my dream, and he told me how I could do that. So the next day I applied to UK. That fall, I enrolled as a 23-year-old freshman at the University of Kentucky. I studied chemistry. Then I went on and got my Doctor of Pharmacy degree. I came back home, and I worked 7 days a week and for the first couple years till I could save up enough money to open up my first store. I ended up opening 4 locations, put a lot of people to work in some of the poorest counties in Kentucky, put millions of payroll dollars back into those local communities, built that business up where it generates tens of millions in sales. And then one day I was talking to one of my colleagues, and we were discussing this drug epidemic. We said, as pharmacists, we should be out here educating these students. We are the drug experts. So we decided to schedule a school. We scheduled a school, went and spoke at that high school that day, about 250 students, and we asked those students, how many have ever abused a drug? right now the statistics say 1 in 4 will abuse a drug before they ever leave high school. Not alcohol or tobacco, a drug. And about half of those students raised their hand in that high school auditorium. And then we asked them, how about any of you that have a family, friend, relative, whatever, around you, or you have abused a drug? All of them raised their hand. After we finished up, there was a line out the door, students coming up and telling us their story. A couple of them will always stick with me. One young man, he was 15 years old. His mother had died from a drug overdose. His father was in jail from the use of drugs and selling drugs. And he himself at 15 had already overdosed a couple times.
Wow.
Another young man was telling us about his father doing drugs. He burned his needles so he could no longer shoot up. And he beat him, and he had to call the cops, and so his dad was arrested. But he said that vicious cycle would repeat itself over and over again. Well, we only thought we would do this presentation to help these kids, and we knew when we left there that day we had to do more. And then eventually, a few weeks later, we met Darius's mother. Our project or our program is called Project Darius, D-A-R-I-S. People can look us up on Facebook. We knew we needed to do more. We met Darius's mother. Darius overdosed from a heroin overdose back in November of 2015. We met her in May. We named the project after Darius. We started going around schools all across Kentucky. We've been to plenty here in Lexington. We've been from one end of the state to the other. Close to 100,000 students, I think, to date now, that we've taught medication safety and substance abuse prevention education in grades K through 12. And we do that because we care about these students and their future. We've never charged the schools $1. I've never charged the schools anything. I give these kids these bracelets that says I can make a difference. I make sure that I empower them to know that it only takes one person to make a difference in this world. They could be that person. Say no to drugs, and of course there's a cross on each side of that, because that's the most important part to me. But that led me to the legislature. So seeing the scourge of drugs and how it was impacting these kids led me to the legislature. I knew we could do more. I think that they deserve an ongoing continuous educational opportunity every single day, and that's what I want them to have. That would be one of the most important things for me to achieve, either in the legislature or as governor, is making sure that these students have every opportunity to succeed, and that's what they need. So that's what led me to the legislature, and then Matt Bevin's arrogance led me to running for governor. And so I think people of Kentucky are asking for a change. I think they deserve an option. I don't think that the party should dictate who is their nominee, and regardless if they're incumbent or not. And I think that the people are ready for a change. They want to head in a different direction than what direction we've been going down for the past couple years under this Bevin administration. He's constantly attacked public education. He's constantly attacked the working class citizens and the lowest income earners of Kentucky. And we need to restore a people first agenda back in that governor's office. We're fed up, and I think that that's the same for most Kentuckians across Kentucky.
Well, thank you. You have an incredible story, for sure. So let's move into some more kind of policy issues. Funding. So Kentucky is a state that seems to give away more in tax credits than it takes in taxes. Last year, our SEEK funding for our student was marketed at being at historic levels, while if you adjust for inflation, it was actually a little lower than it was in 2008. Just some couple of things that we could bring in to help get more money in our state. Solar, for example, is the #1 industry in the nation, followed by wind. And we desperately need that new revenue. So what would you do as governor to secure new revenue so that we can fully fund things like our public schools and our pensions without feeling the crunch elsewhere?
Well, we have plenty of opportunities right now without ever taxing anyone else in Kentucky, or at least taxing the working class people of Kentucky. There's several things. I've been talking about it for a long time. One thing that brings in more money than the tax bill that put those service taxes on the middle income and lowest income earners of Kentucky. So one thing would be the master tobacco settlement.
Okay.
And I've talked about this enough. They're going to end up hopefully doing it before this campaign's over so they can get a pat on the back. But this master tobacco settlement, Kentucky pays out about $250 million a year to this master tobacco settlement in taxes that are on cigarettes, basically directly at the manufacturer level. It goes into this fund and then distributed to all the states that are in this master tobacco settlement fund. Well, 250 leaves Kentucky. We get back 80 to 100 at best. Probably somewhere around 80 most of the time. That means there's about $170 million a year that's leaving Kentucky and going to other states. We can opt out of that. Other states already have.
Okay.
Other states already have, and they collect that money directly from the manufacturer. It would not increase cost to anyone in Kentucky. We would only keep what is ours, and we need to do that. It generates almost as much, if not right at as much, that the tax bill that was passed last year generates. It's between $150 $170 million a year,
Right.
That is already there, that we're giving away to these other people. So why would we do that?
Right.
We shouldn't do that.
Right.
Another thing, I've talked about it, I've tried to talk to this governor about it since 2015, since he was elected. Before Governor Beshear left office, he signed executive order, turned Kentucky Medicaid over to managed care organizations and pharmacy benefit managers. Well, some of the latest audits that we've received and looked at would suggest that those managed care organizations and pharmacy benefit managers are profiting somewhere around $300 to $500 million a year on the backs of the taxpayers to run that service for us. We did it in-house internally forever until about 2014. Why would we send 500, even if it's low estimate, 3 to $500 million a year out of Kentucky in the hands of one of these pharmacy benefit managers and managed care organizations to run a service for us that we did much more efficiently, much more fair to our providers, and cost us a whole lot less money. What this administration says time and time again, oh, we can't do that, we wouldn't know how to run it, this or that. And obviously, you don't connect a lot with Kentucky, because you would know if you did that we already ran those services until 2014 internally and did a great job at doing so. It was turned over because all roads lead to the money, and frankly, Governor Beshear ended up with a nice cushy job with those managed care organizations lobbying in Washington, D.C., and so we were sold out, and now they're profiting $300 to $500 million a year on the backs of the Kentucky taxpayers. So now, low estimate, we'd say 470. High estimate, we could say 670 plus million dollars a year, minus the cost to operate that, which would be negligible compared to that amount that we're looking at in funding. Another thing, these racinos that the governor continues to issue, his racing commission, he's in charge of that. He appointed everybody to that board, like all these other boards.
He's a big fan of winning boards.
Yeah, everybody knows he loves to restructure boards. So the racinos, he has given license after license to these racinos. They put thousands of slot machines in these racetracks that run 6 races maybe a year. That they prey on the most vulnerable in our society. I am not for this expanding slot machine gambling, but they have generated about $4 billion. They paid the state $22 million because of a loophole of historical
Historical
parimutuel
gaming.
racing. Yeah, historical gaming. So their tax rate is extremely low. But all these other states around us that allow this expanded gaming, they tax at 30 to 40%. So there's over $1 billion that's been left on the table there. All the exemptions that you were talking about, all those exemptions add up to close to the 11 billion that we take in. There's about 600 of them. The top three are pharmacy services, food services, and residential utilities. Not even touching those, there's still over $7-8 billion left on the table out of those 600 plus exemptions. I've said forever, before I ever got to the legislature, let's look at every single one of those exemptions line by line and see, does it bring a positive economic benefit to Kentucky? What would happen if we collected that exemption? If it doesn't bring a positive economic benefit, why are we still allowing it?
Right.
Let's sunset it or totally eliminate it immediately and start collecting that exemption. That even if we only found 10% or 5%, we're still talking about, in this brief conversation of just these things, almost $3 billion worth of funding. That's more than we would ever need to do anything. I mean, we could fund our public schools, we could fund our pensions, we could fund everything that we ever needed, and decrease taxes on the working class citizens of Kentucky.
Wow.
So there's a ton of money out there that we're just not collecting, or we're giving away out of the state, in the state, all sorts of stuff that would never jeopardize a job. We can lower taxes on every Kentuckian, but for some reason we're not looking at those options because you follow the money, and it all goes back to corporate America. We have to get past this corporate America agenda here in Kentucky and get back to a people first and start taking care of Kentuckians and keep our money here in Kentucky to take care of Kentuckians. And I think some folks, especially this administration, has lost sight of that, and we need to get back to that.
Well, I don't disagree with any of that, so thank you. Okay, so let's move into pensions. It's been sort of a big deal for me last year.
Sure, I guarantee it.
And almost exactly a year. Speaking of pensions for public employees, what are your thoughts on how this has been handled by Governor Bevin? And what are your thoughts on how you would improve the pension outlook for state employees moving forward? Well,
it's been handled very poorly. There's been an impending doom and a scare tactic made, and there's been an attempt to basically sabotage, I think, the system by the decrease, I guess, the rate of return assumptions were drastically dropped.
Yep.
So that increased the overall unfunded liability. And these are just numbers that people are coming up with. The unfunded liability increased substantially. The contribution rates increased substantially that were going to take place. And these are all just numbers out of the air. The management fees for this pension system for our public employees, KRS, the management fees alone, this governor is supposed to be the financial expert that came here to Kentucky to save us. But see, the management fees for KRS is 10 times the rate that the judicial and the legislative fund pays, well over double the rate that Kentucky Teachers Retirement System pays. And their returns are horrible. $146 million last year was paid in management fees alone for the KRS. And then the returns were negligible compared to even what the management fees were. So he's been in control of that board. Why are the management fees so high? And then his constant push for a 401k, 401a plan, those management fees for those types of plans are even more. But who's profiting from those? I would assume his people are. I know KERS non-hazardous is very in a very bad position right now. It needs a cash infusion. But I've just sat here and talked about a ton of money,
Uh-huh.
and literally a ton. I don't know how much almost $3 billion weighs, but I guarantee it probably weighs a ton.
Yeah.
So we just talked about a ton of money that could be used to put a cash infusion into those plans,
Right.
and make sure that we stabilize them and they're secure for the future of all retirees. We have to ensure that people's economic security is insured, and not scare them and rip the rug out from underneath them. People are counting on this retirement check. They have invested their entire lives in their careers into working for Kentucky, and we have to make sure that we take care of our obligations. And they're running from the obligations. They're saying they're fixing the problem. They're not fixing the problem. He vetoed the budget last year that funded the pensions, and now he goes around and brags on being the governor that funded the pensions. He hasn't funded the pensions. The legislature funded the pensions.
True.
And then he vetoed the budget that I had to override last session to make sure that the pensions were funded.
Spot on. All right, so let's move into education.
Sure.
So what direction would you like to see education take in our state? We currently have charter laws without charter funding, scholarship tax credits failed to pass again this session, and early childhood and university funding all took a cut last budget session. So we are currently ranked around 20th in the nation for K through 12 educational performance. Despite what you might hear from our governor, we're doing pretty okay. But what steps do you see that we might need to take to move us forward or even higher than what we are now?
Well, which part do you want to start? Because I think you talked about seek funding in there.
Yeah, a couple
and
things.
Stuff. So
Yeah.
we just talked, of course, I won't go back into all the sources of funding there.
Right,
I think
right.
that we have plenty of options there for funding and the money without ever raising taxes on the back of any work in Kentucky and whatsoever. What I would like to see is I would like to see this governor or the next governor, and hopefully it's me, live up to what he said he was going to do in 2015, and that was repeal Common Core. I think that we need to teach the child. I had great teachers whenever I was growing up. I am a product of public education. My sister-in-law is a principal at London Elementary. My dear cousin, she's been teaching for 31 plus years at Science Hill. My friend Sandy, of course, she's a retired teacher. I have lots of teachers, great teachers that are in my life. If it wasn't for some of the encouragement and guidance from those public school teachers, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So we have great teachers. We're on the verge of losing all of those great teachers by what we're doing, attacking this pension system, not providing them with economic security to lure new teachers into the career field of being a teacher. They're scared to death of the uncertainty. We have plenty of money. We just have to choose if we're going to collect it or not. We need to make sure that we properly fund these students and make sure that we give them every opportunity that they possibly can. But we need to get away from teaching this test and only teaching a test. And I know your hands are tied as a teacher so much. I mean, I literally have to beg sometimes to get into the schools to get time to go talk to these kids about medication safety and drug prevention, because they have to get through their certain checklist, or else they're in trouble. We have to get away from that, because those checklists don't always work for every student. And that's their excuse for the desire for these charter schools all the time. Well, there's certain students being left behind or whatever. Because we're not able to teach the student.
Right.
The teacher knows what that student needs. The local school district can determine what that school district needs. Why have we not realized that yet?
Right.
And we need to. We need to get back to that, because that's what works, not one size fits all, and that's it.
Right. No, I agree. Okay, so moving into retirees.
Sure.
The pension exemption was lowered last year from $41,000 to $31,000. This impacted not only teacher and state employee retirees, but anyone receiving a pension, including our veterans. House Bill 58, which was meant to address this, was passed unanimously in the House's past session, as you know, but was not taken up in the Senate. So combined with growing health care costs for our retirees, whose health insurance wasn't funded last year in the budget for this cycle, for this upcoming year, what would you do to address those problems?
Well, it needs to get restored, and I voted for it to be restored
Right.
twice.
Mm-hmm.
And both times the Senate failed to take it up. So there needs to be some pressure put on that Senate. That's what needs to happen. We need to put some pressure on the Senate, and we need to put some pressure on who's ever in that executive office to make sure that it gets done.
Right.
That we were promised in the House that if we passed it, that it would be restored.
Mm-hmm.
We passed it unanimously. We passed it unanimously twice. We passed it last session.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't get taken up. We passed it again this session. It didn't get taken up. We have to put the pressure on them. We have to get it done.
Right.
We have to make sure that we restore that exemption for those people.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so this question should be right up your alley. Education, I feel like education is the key to breaking the poverty cycle, which is coupled with an opioid drug crisis in our state, and both of those are leaving more and more of our students without safety and stability at home, causing more and more students to enter our foster care system. And since school provides the one source of stability in many of these kids' lives, what solutions to the poverty cycle and or the opioid drug crisis would you propose as governor to help our most vulnerable children in our state and give them a chance at a brighter future? And I think this is right up your alley.
It is. That's entirely why I decided to run for the legislature to begin with. I share my story with these students because I want to give them hope. One thing that I didn't talk about, I had dropped out of school at 16 years old. I had to find work. It was tough. At 17, I became a father. I was able to take my GED exam because I had a dependent at the time, and then that's when I joined the Army. But I went on, and I didn't let that define me. I went on. I was accepted to the University of Kentucky. I got my Doctor of Pharmacy degree, been extremely successful in business. And we have to show these children that regardless of where you come from, you can succeed. Because who in the world would have thought a poor kid that got picked on and bullied with dirty clothes, holes in his pants and shoes and everything else, couldn't afford lunch money, made sure that I showed up to school on time to eat my breakfast and lunch when I wasn't embarrassed to say that I couldn't pay for it, have stood in knee-deep snow in food bank lines in churches to get food because we didn't have anything for dinner. But who would have thought that that poor kid would be state representative, doctor of pharmacy, a successful businessman, proud father of four, sitting right here with you as a candidate for governor.
Right.
But these children have to have the opportunities. They have to be motivated, and I think they need it. We have them 180 or so school days a year. We have to give them every opportunity to succeed. As far as the drug crisis that's going on in our country, and particularly in Kentucky, I think that a question a day is not too much to ask for. We can give them a quiz on the last day of the week on what they covered the first part of the week, to use that material as evidence-based data for any kind of scientific studies that they want to use it for, to prove that we're making a difference.
Right.
So I think we have to give these kids every single opportunity that we can. And right now, you don't have the time to. You don't have the time because you have to teach a test. You have to teach these kids to do well on this test. we have to teach them life skills, and we have to motivate them to survive and to be successful.
Right.
That's what we need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, everything else nothing else is going to matter.
Right.
If they can't survive, if they have no will or determination to succeed, and we have to motivate them, and we have to show them, regardless of where you come from, no matter how bad it is in your life, I promise you, if you keep working hard, you can be successful. I just seen on the news a young lady from near where I live in Leslie County. She just got accepted to Yale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that too.
Yale.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about how bad the public school system is, and
right.
we need. They say we need charter schools.
Right.
But this young lady just got accepted to Yale. I have friends, their children come from middle income families.
Mm-hmm.
They're at Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
They went to public schools here in Kentucky. They are successful.
Right.
They are thriving. Our teachers love our students. They care about our students. They need the flexibility to teach our students. But even right now, they're still succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
They're still succeeding. Right. What are they looking at? I don't know. I continuously hear about one school district, but I guarantee there's kids there that are succeeding, and we have to make sure that all of them are succeeding, and stop being so focused on teaching to a test.
I couldn't agree more. And just your story is just, it's incredible. Again, having had one friend who successfully went through the pharmacy school at UK, and several who weren't even able to get in, you have to be incredibly bright to even be able to do that. So that's a testament to you and your hard work and your ability to do that. So you're clearly a very smart guy.
that was the foundation that was laid
mm-hmm.
by my public school teachers. The encouragement, the hard work that they took the time out to make sure they spent with me while I was younger and in school,
mm-hmm.
to make sure that I understood and I achieved everything that I should have been achieving. And they made sure that I did the very best that I possibly could do every time they gave me an assignment, regardless of me coming to school with holes in my pants and torn
mm-hmm.
up shoes and didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. They didn't care. They didn't look down on me.
Right.
They embraced me.
Right. That's what we do. All right, let's get to some more fun, lighter subjects here. So besides your hometown, because that would be cheating, what is your favorite spot to visit in Kentucky?
Well, besides my hometown, so that's tough, of course, because we always love home.
Right.
But we love visiting northern Kentucky. We love going up there. We love going to Louisville. We
mm-hmm.
love going to Lexington. Here in Lexington, just the urban areas. There's so much going on.
Right.
Of course, we always love going back home, though.
Right.
Right. That's it. But there's so much going on in Kentucky. You can find a little bit of anything.
True.
And it's not that far away. A couple hours drive from our house to either one of those locations,
mm-hmm.
and we can find anything that we want to do.
Right.
Really.
Right. Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite Kentucky meal?
Well, I'll have to brag on my mother-in-law because she's a great cook,
uh-huh.
and so she fixes the best fried chicken that there ever is.
Yes.
She probably won't get to watch this. I'm not sure if she's on Facebook, but she does. I'll have to brag on her. The best fried chicken, mashed potatoes, baked beans. I mean, she does a phenomenal job with everything that she does. So I could say a dozen different restaurants that I love to go and eat at.
Right.
But whenever it comes down to it, I love that home cooked meal that she fixes.
And I think anytime you can brag on your mother-in-law, you probably should.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing about Kentucky?
I would say the good nature and the kind hearts of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Okay, and last question, who is your favorite Kentuckian?
Abraham Lincoln.
Okay. I mean, you can't really compete with him in a lot of ways. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and talking to our friends out here in Kentucky 120 United.
There's a bunch of people watching.
There are a bunch of people watching. So, and there'll
I
be.
apologize if I got emotional.
No,
it's my public school teachers and the people that have motivated me in my life. Those are them. My cousin, she's been teaching for 30 plus years. She's more like a sister to me, and she's always been a motivator in my life. And if it wasn't for those teachers that laid that groundwork and that foundation in my life and that stability in my life, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Right. Thank you again for sitting down with us, and hope you all have a good day. All right. Bye.